Does he look just like that then?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much?
Yep.
Okay.
Except now he's got a tattoo on his arm.
You said, something about a gunshot, so is that how you want me to do it? You want me to shoot him?
Unless you can do it painlessly, breaking his neck, that would...
Well, I would prefer to use either a knife or a gun. That's quick and easy.
Do it now instead, it's painless, less painless.
Right.
Glenn Sandler was famous for making some of the best sandwiches in Palm Beach, Florida. But it wasn't his culinary skills that landed him behind bars. It was his shocking attempt to hire a hitman to kill his wife. Sandler, a wealthy entrepreneur and owner of the gourmet deli, got caught in a brazen undercover operation, including a fake drug run and a stage hit designed to catch him red-handed. So who really is Glenn Sandler? He made a name for himself in Palm Beach as the owner of a beloved deli. "We were doing about $3 million a year in business," former restaurant manager Rich Hardy told Dateline's Keith Morrison. "For a 150-seat deli, that's an incredible amount. We would have waiting lines 2 hours long for people to come and eat dinner." Sandler's employees noted that the married father was frequently present at the deli, often working alongside his team from open to close before heading home to his beautiful wife, Betty Schussler, and their 2 young sons. They got along great. Andy Garnett, who sold Sandler the successful deli, said of their marriage, "He had a little house down in the Keys. I rode down there with him and spent a few days out on his boat fishing. Not that I'm much of a fisherman. He wasn't all flashy or anything, just a real nice guy." But those who knew him said he also was a man who didn't like to lose. So what drove Glenn Sandler to want to kill his wife? It was his determination to succeed that may have led to his downfall. By 2004, after more than 2 decades together, Betty filed for divorce from her husband. Glenn was not only losing his wife, but he also stood to lose his business, beloved airplane, and home in an elite Palm Beach neighborhood. At one point, he offered her more than $2 million, and she said that's not enough. "It's not enough, I want more," Deirdre Funchen, a reporter for the Broward Palm Beach New-Times, explained. And this bugged him to no end. Sandler's life began to spiral out of control. His employees noticed he wasn't at the deli as often. According to Deirdre Funchen, he started using cocaine and spending time in seedy motels with women. By the fall of 2005, Sandler was desperate enough to reach out to his friend and drug dealer, Chris Robinson, asking if he would throw a birthday party for his wife, which was a chilling code for killing her. The plan was for Robinson and his associates to use 2 cars to ram into Betty at an intersection, making her death look like a traffic accident. Sandler handed Robinson $5,000 to carry out the hit, but before the plan could be executed, Robinson was arrested on a separate drug charge. With his own future now in jeopardy, Robinson turned on Sandler and told the police about the murder plot. Authorities then arranged for an undercover FBI agent to pose as Robinson's boss and offer to carry out the hit himself. Using the cover name Fred, the agent quickly dismissed Robinson's flimsy plan. "This guy wants her done, and you're gonna have her bedridden with a back problem. Next thing, she'll be in a wheelchair the rest of her life," he told Sandler in a taped conversation. Instead, Fred proposed a $20,000 plan to use lime to eat away at the body, leaving no trace of Betty. Sandler began to believe he had found a kindred spirit of sorts in Fred, and the 2 men began to bond over more than just murder. During one conversation, Fred casually mentioned that he not only sold drugs but also transported them. This revelation prompted Sandler to share a secret about his own past. In the 1980s, Sandler had used a speedboat to smuggle drugs into the country from Colombia. "I mean, I had a couple of customers, but I'd get $1,000 a key no matter what. Just the transport, okay?" he boasted during one taped interaction. "And I always had a minimum of 100, so I'd get $100,000 just to get out of bed." Sandler, a pilot, even volunteered to help Fred move his drugs using his own plane. Not wanting to blow his cover, the federal agent had to think fast. To convince Sandler he was the criminal he claimed to be, authorities staged a drug run. Sandler flew Fred to Sebring, Florida, where they met a supposed associate of Fred's named T-Bone, who was actually another undercover agent, and couriered 5 kilos of cocaine back to Palm Beach. But was Betty Sandler killed? With a fake drug run complete, Sandler turned his focus back to the murder of his wife. Despite Fred giving him multiple chances to back out, Sandler was set on his plan. "She's done," he said in one recording. "It's like somebody that blackmails you. You can't let it happen, because once it starts, it never stops. They don't go away." Sandler was convinced that Betty could reveal a tax issue from a cash business they once owned together, which he saw as another reason to take her out of the picture. In their final meeting before the supposed hit, Sandler, frustrated with what he perceived as his wife's constant dissatisfaction, told Fred to ask her, "Is this enough?" in her final moments. On November 8, 2005, the day the murder was supposed to take place, Palm Beach County Sheriff's detectives Jason Latoile followed Betty's car to a stoplight, pulled her over, and broke the shocking news. "I told her husband had hired someone to kill her. That fortunately was an undercover police officer," Latoile recalled. "She really wasn't surprised. She acted sort of really exasperated, kind of a what now sort of thing. Betty agreed to cooperate, handing over her phone and other personal items to make it look like the act had been completed. Latoile then abandoned her car at a grocery store parking lot to make it appear as though she'd been ambushed while shopping. The next day, Fred arranged to meet Sandler in a parking lot to collect the final installment of his payment. "Dude, she's dead. She's done. Done," Fred told Sandler. "You don't want to talk about it." As soon as Fred left the clandestine meeting, officers moved in to arrest Sandler. He ultimately pleaded guilty to solicitation to commit first-degree murder and trafficking in cocaine, receiving a 15-year sentence. Betty, who declined to participate in Dateline, went on with her life. According to Coming Soon Net, Glenn walked out of prison in August 2018 after serving 11 years. His whereabouts remain unknown. Let's talk about Mark Sievers. The last time anyone saw Dr. Teresa Sievers alive in public, she was returning to work at Southwest Florida International Airport, fresh off a family vacation. Her husband and 2 daughters stayed behind, enjoying a bit more vacation time. But Teresa never made it to her medical office the next day. Instead, a concerned neighbor sent by her husband to check on her stumbled upon a horrific scene. Teresa's bloody body lay on the kitchen floor, brutally beaten to death with a hammer. In a frantic 911 call, Dr. Mark Petrites described the grisly scene. "She's bashed in the back of the head, and she's cold. She's dead cold." At first, the police were baffled. The house was untouched, no signs of a break-in, and a safe holding over $40,000 was left undisturbed. It didn't seem like a robbery gone wrong. Plus, Mark Sievers had an alibi. He was out of state with their daughters when the murder happened, which seemed to clear him of suspicion. But the plot thickened with some wild theories. Dr. Sievers practiced holistic medicine, and just that month, 2 other holistic doctors in Florida had been murdered. This led to a flurry of speculation about a possible serial killer targeting holistic practitioners. Investigators chased this theory but hit a dead end quickly. As prosecutor Cynthia Ross said on Annie's Killer Cases, there was absolutely no trace evidence. This was almost the perfect crime. 2 weeks into the investigation, detectives finally caught a break. A tipster from Missouri called in with a bombshell. Curtis Wayne Wright, a career criminal with a long rap sheet, had confessed to the crime. With this new lead, investigators zeroed in on Wright and quickly expanded their focus to another suspect, Jimmy Ray Rogers, also no stranger to crime. When they first questioned Wright and Rogers, both men denied any involvement, but the detectives had some tricks up their sleeves. They pulled GPS data from a rental car the men had used, which traced their journey from Missouri to Bonita Springs right before the murder. And then came the clincher. Surveillance footage from a Florida Walmart showed Wright and Rogers buying some pretty suspicious items, like black towels, black shoes, and even a lock-picking kit. Investigators later interviewed Jimmy Ray Rogers' girlfriend, Taylor Showmaker. She confessed that Rogers had confessed the murder to her. She even took investigators to the spot where Rogers had dumped the bloody clothes from the crime scene. With this evidence, Rogers was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life. Curtis Wayne Wright, on the other hand, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and got 25 years. He struck a deal because he was willing to rat out the mastermind behind the whole plot. According to Wright, the orchestrator was none other than his high school best friend, Dr. Sievers' husband, Mark Sievers. As evidence began piling up against Mark Sievers, detectives weren't too surprised. During his interrogation, Sievers' grief seemed over the top. "We've met a lot of people who've lost a loved one, and he seemed fake," Lieutenant David Liebit told Killer Cases. "I saw a lot of simulated favor. It didn't seem real." According to Wright's testimony, Sievers had recruited Wright and Rogers to kill his wife because of marriage problems and fear of losing custody of his 2 daughters. Sievers' attorney tried to cast doubt on Wright's reliability, arguing that as a confessed murderer who had lied to the authorities before, Wright wasn't a trustworthy witness. But the prosecutors had more evidence. Cell phone data showed that Sievers and Wright had been in contact using burner phones in the weeks leading up to the murder. On top of that, Wright's phone had pinged near the Sievers' home on the morning of the murder. In the end, the jury was convinced by the prosecution's case. After just 4 hours of deliberation, they found Mark Sievers guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The jury that convicted Mark Sievers recommended the death penalty, but the final decision rested with Lee County Judge Bruce Kyle. This decision was particularly challenging because one of Sievers' daughters had written to the court pleading for mercy. She explained that losing her father after already losing her mother would be unbearable. During a sentencing hearing, Sievers read from a prepared statement, maintaining his innocence and emotionally pleading for his life. "Our girls have tragically lost their mommy, and now they're about to lose their daddy as well. Therefore, I respectfully ask the court for life, as not to compound their loss and suffering," he said. Despite these pleas, Judge Kyle was unmoved and sentenced Sievers to death on January 3, 2020. "I judge people's actions. I don't judge people's souls," Kyle said. "And if I'm wrong, hopefully God will have mercy on both of us." So where is Mark Sievers now? Well, after his conviction, his attorneys didn't waste any time. They filed a notice of appeal on February 10, 2020. Right now, Mark Sievers is on death row at Florida State Prison in Rayford, Florida. His case is still in motion. On October 5, 2021, they had oral arguments for his appeal. His lawyers are pushing hard for a new trial. One of his attorneys, Kerry Kinney, argued that the state missed a crucial deadline to add aggravating factors to their murder case. If that's true, it means the death penalty shouldn't have been on the table in the first place. So the fight isn't over yet, and Sievers is still hoping for a different outcome. Diana Lovejoy and her gun instructor were sentenced to life in prison for a failed plot to kill her estranged husband, Greg Mulvihill, who miraculously survived the attack on a dark dirt road in Carlsbad. Just a week after the 2016 attack, authorities arrested their prime suspect, Diana Lovejoy. Diana had a tumultuous history with Greg. They dated for a year before tying the knot in a private ceremony in 2007 and lived together for 7 years. Their marriage was far from perfect. She endured 8 miscarriages before finally giving birth to their son. Unfortunately, their relationship didn't have a fairy tale ending. Diana filed for divorce in 2014, and the case dragged on for 2 years. Initially, the court granted her full custody of their son, allowing Greg only supervised visits for a few hours. She claimed sexual abuse as the reason for the divorce, but investigators found no evidence to support her allegations. Greg Mulvihill was ordered to pay $100 per month in child support. By the summer of 2016, the court ruled that Greg and Diana should share custody of their son, and both would contribute to the monthly child support payments. Despite earning $10,000 per month, Diana kept their family home in Carlsbad, but had to pay Greg a $120,000 settlement. Things took a dark turn after this ruling. Not wanting to share custody, Diana conspired with her shooting instructor McDavid to kill Greg. Just 4 months after paying the $120,000 settlement, she attempted to execute this deadly plot. So how did this happen? Around 10:30 p.m. on September 1, 2016, Greg Mulvihill received a mysterious call. The male voice on the other end claimed to have incriminating evidence against him related to the custody battle over his infant son, Cale. The caller said the evidence was taped to a utility pole along a dirt path off Avenida Soledad in Carlsbad, California. Curious and determined, Greg grabbed a flashlight and his son's mini baseball bat and then asked a neighbor to join him on the trip to the deserted trail. When they arrived, they heard a rustle in the bushes, saw the barrel of a gun, and then the flash of gunfire. Greg was hit in the side, but managed to survive. The shooting shocked the beachside community, but the real surprise came a week later. Authorities arrested their prime suspect, Greg's estranged wife. Investigators believed that Diana Lovejoy was unhappy with the 50-50 custody arrangement and the $120,000 she had to pay Greg. To everyone's shock, it turned out she had hired her firearms instructor and former lover, ex-Marine Weldon McDavid, to shoot Greg. She was going through a contentious custody dispute, and she hired Weldon McDavid to shoot her husband and eliminate the problem, Carlsbad Police Department Sergeant Darby Ernst told People. It's as straightforward as possible. On November 13th, the jury agreed. Both Lovejoy and McDavid were found guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy. The verdict hit hard. McDavid wept, and Lovejoy reportedly collapsed and had to be taken to a local hospital. Despite the convictions, both Lovejoy and McDavid maintained their innocence, with their attorneys arguing there was no actual intention to kill Greg. It turns out Diana Lovejoy paid Weldon McDavid $2,000 to carry out the attack. She denied being part of the conspiracy, claiming she could never harm the father of her child. However, more evidence surfaced, including her asking her aunt about finding someone to kill Greg. The court didn't buy her story and found her guilty, sentencing her to 26 years in prison. On top of that, both Diana and McDavid were ordered to pay Greg $500,000 each as damages. Neither Diana nor McDavid were happy with the ruling, so they filed an appeal. But after a thorough review, the jury confirmed their intent to murder Greg, and the sentence is stuck. So where is Diana Lovejoy now? She's serving her time at Central California Women's Facility and will be eligible for parole in 2036. McDavid, being the main accomplice, got 50 years in prison.
Did you originally have your wife? No, I did not. I'll put it this way too. I mean, if anything happens to her, that's one of the things I was thinking about on the way over here is like, what the hell am I going to do now? I mean, me battling for custody was also relying on her to be paying me child support of $600 to $700 a month.
Robert Fratto was accused of hiring a hitman to murder his wife, but his plan fell apart completely once he got caught. The previous night before the murder, investigators were combing through the garage of her home in Atascocita. Neighbors told investigators they heard the first shot, followed by a scream, and then another quick shot. The suspect was seen hiding by a tree before a vehicle came around the corner, picked him up, and sped off. Despite the commotion, investigators found no evidence of robbery, assault, or any other motive. That's when they began questioning Fratto, the victim's estranged husband. Relatives mentioned that Fratto and his wife had been in a bitter custody battle over their 3 children for 2.5 years. When asked if he had anything to do with his wife's death, Fratto denied it. "If anything happens to her, that's one of the things I was thinking about on the way over here. Like, what the hell am I gonna do now? I mean, the custody battle, I was also relying on her to pay me child support of $600 or $700 a month." But even with these words, Fratto didn't seem shocked when he was proven guilty. Perhaps he'd already accepted his fate by that point. The jury found Robert Allen Fratto guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment, sealing his fate with the foreman's signature.
We have Christine Ricky.
As murder suspect Christine Ritchie is brought into a Plymouth courtroom, her cuffed hands behind her back were shaking. The 46-year-old Marshfield woman hunched over, appearing distraught as charges were read.
You are charged with murder.
Soon Ritchie collapses, the arraignment is stopped, and the courtroom cleared. First responders arrived and transported her to the
In
hospital.
2021, a Marshfield woman, Christine Ritchie, collapsed in a Plymouth courtroom as she was being arraigned for the death of her husband, a Boston firefighter. The 46-year-old was charged with 1 count of murder, according to Plymouth District Attorney Timothy Cruz. As Ritchie was brought into court, she was visibly distressed, hunched over, hands shaking, and appearing to cry. When the charge was read aloud, she began to collapse. A court official quickly ordered someone to call 911, stating that she was having a medical emergency. The courtroom was promptly cleared of staff and onlookers. Ritchie was transported through a back entrance to an ambulance with a sheet covering her head. The incident leading to her arrest occurred on Thursday at their home on 679 Moraine Street. Marshfield police responded to the scene and found Michael Ritchie, who'd been stabbed. He was taken to a South Shore hospital where he was pronounced dead. Michael Ritchie was a 23-year veteran of the Boston Fire Department. "This is an awful tragedy," Boston Fire said in a statement. "Michael was a valued member of the Boston Fire Department for 23 years. He will be greatly missed. Our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family." Later that afternoon, after Christine Ritchie was transported to an unspecified hospital by ambulance, her attorney, Josh Wood, appeared in court and requested that the case be moved to 10 a.m. on Monday. In the meantime, Ritchie was being held without bail. Assistant District Attorney Shannon Buckingham filed a motion to keep both the murder case and an earlier case from March of last year under wraps. That earlier case involved Christine Ritchie being charged with disturbing the peace and trespassing. District Judge Franco Goborn approved the motion, meaning only court officials can access the files while the public is kept in the dark. No reason was given for this decision. The earlier case was also in Plymouth District Court. On December 18th, it was continued without a finding, and Ritchie was placed on probation after admitting to sufficient facts. Plymouth County District Attorney Timothy Cruz said in a press release that Marshfield police received a call at 4:46 p.m. Thursday about a medical emergency at 679 Moraine Street. When police and emergency medical personnel arrived, they found Michael Ritchie with stab wounds. He was taken to South Shore Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Following this, Marshfield police contacted the state police detectives attached to the district attorney's office, who then charged Christine Ritchie with murder.
He asked to speak to me out in private, and he said, I hate to be the one to inform you of this, but we've been notified that there has been a contract put out on your life.
A contract out on your life? It just sounds, it sounds insane.
Matthew Campbell's story is quite a shocker. Back in 2010, when he was just 19, Matthew from Billings, Montana was arrested for plotting to hire a hitman to kill his mother, Dana Campbell. Can you imagine? His own mom. He pleaded guilty to using a cell phone with the intent to commit murder for hire and got sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. By 2014, Matthew was almost done with his sentence and set to be released the following month. Surprisingly, his family, including his sister Nikki Campbell, forgave him. She told ABC News, "He wants to move on and put everything past him, and we do too." It's a wild story, but it looks like they were all ready to turn a new page. But how did it happen? In 2010, Dana Campbell got the shock of her life when an FBI agent informed her that she was the target of a hitman her son allegedly hired. He asked to speak to me in private and said, "I hate to be the one to inform you, but we've been notified that there's been a contract put out on your life," Dana recalled. It sounds insane. According to the FBI, Matthew Campbell had offered to pay $5,000 upfront to have his mother killed and another $5,000 once the job was done. The fact that he was only thinking of himself and what he could get out of it made me question everything I ever knew about him, Nikki Campbell, his sister, said. Was I next? Was my sister next? Nikki had always believed their family had an unbreakable bond. They enjoyed family trips and bickered like typical siblings. "We picked on each other and picked on my little sister a lot, but we knew that we had each other," she said. However, that bond began to fray when Matthew started getting into trouble. "He didn't want to live at home with my parents anymore. It was a tough living situation and he decided to run away basically," Nikki Campbell explained. We didn't know where he was, and he got himself into some trouble with cars and whatnot. Matthew Campbell eventually ended up in a halfway house in Helena, Montana. While there, he started having some really dark conversations with fellow inmates about who they could kill for money. According to court documents, Matthew wanted his mother killed so he could cash in on insurance money, a recent inheritance she had received, and other household items. But one of the inmates tipped off the authorities about Matthew's plan. That other person went to the Department of Corrections and basically told on my brother and said Matthew Campbell wants to hire someone to kill his mother, Nikki Campbell shared. This led Matthew to unknowingly meet with an undercover FBI agent, according to court documents. The agent posed as a hitman and approached Matthew. Nikki mentioned that Matthew had written her a letter saying he was afraid of the man and felt pressured to go through with the plot. He felt like if he tried to back out, the guy would come after him just because now my brother had the name of a contract killer, Nikki explained. That's how Matthew Campbell's plan was exposed. The family believed Matthew never truly intended to kill his mother and was waiting for him to come home from prison. Nikki shared a recent email she received from her brother saying, "Hey, I need an address from you so I can send you this birthday card. And how is the shoe hunting coming? My birthday's coming up, and he's still going to be in prison when my birthday is here, but he's still going to send me a card. It's the first time I've gotten a card from him since he's been gone," she said. "It's touching, I guess. I think we're going to flourish probably into the best relationship we've ever had." It seems the family had accepted the past and was ready to move forward with a renewed sense of hope and forgiveness. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories.